Right.
It's a stupid name.
Talk about that as well. I'll start the recorder off.
I'll be Mr. Grumpy.
Right, that's starting.
Where's the chat room gone? There it is.
The Windows seems a bit skew width, but
Yeah, it used to be. It was resizable up until a week or so ago.
my levels don't seem quite right. Testing 1, 2, 3. That's okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's just. I'll try going one more time. He's probably got Wi-Fi problems. Usually. It's usually his Wi-Fi issues that prevent him.
You should have watched the Gadget Show. They had a test of Wi-Fi routers.
I've got one here. Right. Okay. Well, hopefully Gary can join us. So we'll make a start. So good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Okay. And I don't know what show. Let's have a look. What show number should we be on now? Whatever it is, I'm going to add 1 to it.
Yeah. We just completely skip over a whole show.
Yeah. So it should be 468, but I think 469. I think it should be 469, but I think we'll go 552 or something like that, just to be different.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like the whole when they called it Windows 7, people trying to work out how they got to 7.
Yeah, so in case anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, today as we record on Tuesday evening, Microsoft did their first media briefing and announcement of some Windows 10 as it is. So some people might be listening to this thinking, what? But yeah. So we're going to talk about that, the naming and all some of the features on there as well. So we're trying to get Gary. Maybe he's trying to install Windows 10 as we speak, or maybe he's Googling and trying to find where the Windows 9 links are.
Yeah,
trying to figure out how he's one behind.
Maybe it's going to be the Windows 10 Strictly Come Dancing edition.
Could be. Yeah.
They're hoping they're going to get 10 out of 10 with it.
10. That's 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10. Yeah. So yeah, I keep trying to add Gary as we're talking. So hello to anybody that joins us in the chat room. So we're recording a bit later tonight, various reasons, but quite good because it just gets to fit in with the briefing. So none of the stuff is all the stuff we're talking about is official on the Microsoft on the Windows blog. So there's no NDA stuff to talk about. So anyway, so yeah, there's no restrictions what we talk about.
There is one top secret thing I can reveal. And that is, while it's Windows 10 now, about halfway through its life cycle, it's going to be rebranded as Windows MSN.
Yes, we could actually talk about that as well. So there's quite a few things happening in this week. So got a busy show for you. So let's fill in. So last week or so, last couple of weeks ago, Microsoft sent out invites to have a look at the next version of Windows to a few press, and I think they've got some more briefings, but it was a few press, and obviously they announced it on the blog today. So we thought it was going to be called Windows 9, or we guessed Windows 1, didn't we? We thought maybe that would be well, I think that was one of Gary's suggestions, Windows 1.
Yeah, and I think there was exchange, wasn't there, between Mary Jo Foley and Tom Warren with oh gosh, his name slips my mind now. That's terrible. Terry Myerson. And he was talking about he had a picture of him stood in front of the screen where it's got Windows, and then just the last bit was obscured. And I must admit, I was working out, and it looked like the Windows was centered in the screen, and I wondered whether or not actually it was going to turn out it wasn't blocking anything out. But yeah, I don't. Windows 10. That's just. I mean, if that's going to be the last edition of Windows, that's what we're stuck with now. Is it Windows 10?
So I mean, we didn't live stream this, so we've only seen what they've announced on the Windows blog and what was said on the live blogs. There wasn't really an explanation of why they're calling it Windows 10, was there? Apart from they said that Windows 1 wasn't available, kind of joking, because that was used by Mr. Gates.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I've been out this evening, so I really haven't had much chance to catch up on the news. But I mean, I just think just calling it Windows would have been, that would have made sense. It seems like we're, transitioning away from, Windows versions as it is. I'm still not convinced that Windows is necessarily the right name for the kind of non-desktopy version of Windows, assuming that's actually going to exist. But yeah, Windows 10 just seems a very odd choice.
Yeah, maybe we'll find out more as the strategy continues. I get the feeling the Windows 1, although it was joking, but I get the feeling that's what they wanted to try and say, that it's a big step forward. And I joked on Twitter that they really wanted to distance themselves from Windows 8 by making you forget Windows 9, but.
Maybe it's people that drive around with personal registration plates, but they couldn't quite get what they wanted, so they put where the screw hole goes. They put it there, so it look like a full stop. Maybe it's going to be there'll be like a little secret, just a 1 pixel for Windows 1.0.
But I mean, I can see why I think they've done it to make it stand out, a big step forward. But you're going to get lots of jokes, aren't you, about where's Windows 9 and all, and why Microsoft can't add up. But then Windows 7 wasn't version 7 of Windows, wasn't the 7th version of Windows, was it?
No, that's it. Windows 7 is what, version 6.2, I think, isn't it? Compared to I think Vista was 6.0, wasn't it? And then Windows 7 was 6.1, and now Windows 8 is 6.2. So, but yeah, just sometimes you just wonder with their naming conventions.
It's a nice round number.
It is, yes. And if it does prove to be the last kind of big bang Windows release, then I guess Windows 10 is, like I say, it's a nice round number. And if they kind of stop incrementing that number in the future, I guess they must feel like they've got this thing right, and that they're not going to need to distance themselves from it. I guess it's going to be to Windows 8 what Windows 7 was to Vista.
Yeah, I mean that's it exactly, isn't it? That it's that separation, and really from looking at the sort of the announcement today, they were certainly looking to distance it from Windows 8 and make a big change.
Yes, I mean it's certainly, we've talked about this many times. In some ways, the reason why Windows 8 exists the way it does was because they needed almost to force people into using Metro, so that developers were tempted to write Metro applications. I mean, I think in hindsight that was definitely not the right thing to do, but who knows? Maybe I think 100,000 apps in the Windows 8 store. Maybe we wouldn't be at that number if they hadn't have taken the route that they did. But and I think Windows 8.1 was very much a reflection of probably what they should have done, and this is the next evolutionary step with adding tiles into the start menu, and also allowing the Metro apps to actually run in floating windows.
Yeah, I mean this, as we said last week, this event is very much focused on IT professionals, enterprise user or enterprise sort of decision makers. It was not about consumers.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think they're ultimately they're the people that they've alienated, and they're the people they need to bring back into the fold. And really, I guess to repeat, they need to pull a Windows 7. They need to convince people that this is the version that they need to get on. I mean, it's interesting because I was out this evening and I was actually visiting a prospective school and talking to some of the teachers how they've literally just moved from XP to Windows 7. And so Microsoft can't afford for Windows 7 to become Windows XP, the equivalent of it, and have people at the end of life still running Windows 7. They need to get them onto a modern operating system, one that is frequently updated and frequently new features added, and almost just becomes, the base version that you install, and then you get, the iterative changes on top.
Yeah, I mean, that is one way of getting it's getting people to stay up to date, isn't it? Is by not requiring a big bang update and process like going from XP to 7 to 8 or whatever, and just to incrementally update it and have a base operating system. And that is a way to ensure that everybody stays on the new OS. I mean, and developers then will target the latest version, I guess, if you get more people on the new version. But it's not something that traditionally enterprises have liked. You've seen lots of changes. I know from sort of my day job as an IT manager, having rolled out Windows 7, we don't want to start rolling out Windows 8 because you kind of just finish one and before the next one starts. And we've given Windows 8 to a few people who are okay with it, but to a very limited group of people, because we know that there are some people we could never give Windows 8 to. We just would never get through the support calls. And it's not Windows 8. It's just those users are so used to. I mean, they're the people who get Windows 7 and switch on the Windows 2000 look and feel. And it's them. It's them are the hard ones to convince.
Yeah, I think it's certainly the way things that are going, and it makes sense to have a basic operating system that then has some incremental but maybe rapid releases, particularly consumer focused. But then I think the next interesting hurdle to cross is what happens when those features, those add-ons start to kind of make certain hardware outdated. It's you almost get into that kind of iOS and Android, whereby you buy the hardware and it just comes with the latest release of Windows on it.
Yeah, and also that has a way that we're not used to in the sort of PC industry, of obsoleting hardware for you. Because if you're an iOS user and you've had one for a while, you know the situation where you get your nice new iPhone 4, say, and it comes with iOS 4 or 5 or whatever it was. I forgot what it was at the time, and it's fantastic. And then you get iOS 5, and it's okay. It's still really good. Then iOS 6 comes out, and it reduces the battery life, and it's a bit sluggish. And then by the time you get to iOS 8, things crawling along and half an hour of battery life, and it's that along with the sort of the hardware becoming old, it's obsolete, isn't it? And so you get the new device, and it gives you that short lifespan of devices that we talked about in the past. Whereas in the PCs, they've suffered the other problem where they just generally slow down through sort of installing CRUD on there, but not because of the change in the operating system. So I wonder whether we'll see that switch around.
Yeah, and I also wonder as well that whether or not mobile technology is actually caught up pretty much to where desktop technology is. That we've got Windows, we've had Windows 7, we've had Windows 8, we'll have Windows 10, and I imagine on the desktop that actually the PC requirements are still kind of Windows 7 era. And I think with quad-core mobile processors and 2 gigabytes of RAM and all the other components, that in many ways maybe the hardware has now reached that point where it's hard to make the hardware obsolete compared to the latest version of the operating system. And then the only thing to drive you to get in the new device is that it's got things like leaps that we've seen with gyroscopes and accelerometers and NFC and things like that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they deliver that now. And how whether you said Windows 10 is the last major operator, but we kind of said this every time, haven't we? Maybe Windows 8 is the last one, and they'll continue. And it looked like almost with Windows 8.1 they're going to do that, but now we've got this change, which is the major change is not really technology driven; it's branding driven, isn't it? The technology is incremental. I know to some people it'll look a big change with the new start menu, but it is a polish of Windows 8.
Yes, yeah, no, it certainly is. And I think as well that while over time it will be, Windows will evolve, I think with the rapid release cycles, it won't feel like a big bang release, because we'll just be getting updates trickling through. We've talked about it before, Windows can't wait 3 years now for a new release, because things like iOS and mobile operating systems will just leap ahead of them.
So let's talk about some of the features then. So we mentioned a couple of things. So I'll use the blog that I'll include in the show notes from I think on the Windows blog that really talks about some of the new features, and the live blogs as well that I was following. So the first thing they talked about really was the fact that Windows 10 is going to run on a huge range of devices, which they say Internet of Things to servers in enterprise data centers. So you could have a 4-inch screen or an 18-inch screen or no screen at all, and it could be a touch screen or using a pen or a mouse and keyboard or whatever. And they're talking about that Windows to do all of this, but they're not. But what they actually explicitly say in the post is they're not talking one UI to rule them all. We're talking about a product family with tailored experiences for each devices. So maybe that's something slightly new. With Windows 8, the visions was the Metro UI. Now they're perhaps saying, yeah, it'll be Windows, but the UI may be different.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's some massive advantages there, isn't there? We've already started to see with the universal apps, and it does make sense that the underlying core operating system and APIs are the same. And it's good that we've reached that point. Mistakes of the past whereby they tried to fit a desktop user experience onto a mobile device. It's nice to know that they're not going to make those same mistakes.
Yeah. And they have the right experience, the right device at the right time. So that's pretty much what you're saying there. So we're not going to be sort of forcing one UI on one type of and one ecosystem. It's depending on what you're doing at the time. Now, what they haven't really shown off is how they're going to implement that, but they give us some ideas. For example, the first thing they showed off was the new start menu. This looks very much like the leaks that we've seen with a Windows 7 style start menu with the search box, and the username and the recently used things on the left-hand side. But then there's a mini Metro start screen on the right-hand side of that, complete with live tiles. So I think that's probably a fair compromise.
Yes, yeah, and it also opens up, possibilities that people like Asus tried with the pad phone. You can imagine a phone with a Windows phone. Windows.
We've got Gary there.
Hey,
hi guys, sorry I'm late.
Okay. Oh, we just started, and we're just on the sort of the intros and talk about the name, which we'll come back to. But we're just talking about the start menu now. So I don't know what you've seen, Gary.
I have unfortunately seen absolutely nothing because I was just following a car home which decided to plough off the side of the road.
Oh.
so fortunately nobody hurt, but I had to stay and give a witness statements. So I've actually absolutely seen nothing this evening.
Okay.
Behind things.
Right. Well, you can listen in, and then we'll get your thoughts. So I was just saying that we've got the new start menu. That was the first thing that was shown off with the traditional Windows 7 style with a Metro style complete with live tiles. And Jay, sorry, you were just saying there that you think this opens up some possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, Asus tried it with Android and the pad phone, whereby you've got your Windows Phone UI and UX user experience, but then you plug it into inside a bigger screen, and it could transition into this, running the same applications, but then you get the start menu, but still with the live tiles sitting in that start menu. So I think when I saw the first kind of concept pictures that they released when they were hoping to get it into Windows 8.2, I really like the appearance of the new start menu. I think I like the way that the tiles still exist, and you can customize it and get rid of them if you don't want them. But for someone that's maybe on a hybrid device, a bit like a like a Surface Pro 3, having that dual interface, I think could work really well.
Yeah, Gary, I don't know if you've seen the screenshot, but basically it's as the leaks indicated with the sort of the hybrid approach.
Yeah, I gathered that from things I was hearing today. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, and I think that as Jason said, that does really open up some possibilities. And I really like what I saw the original leak.
So I think for a laptop desktop user, it makes a lot of sense to have that there. And as I mentioned in the past, when I use a Surface, I'd never really use a desktop apart from the occasional Word. When I go to do blog posts, it loads Word up, and I usually run it full screen. However, a laptop at work that's got my development environment on and all the work stuff, I very rarely use the start menu, apart from to launch apps and run the odd app like my Flickr app or whatever. So that in that hybrid sort of mode would work much better when I'm on my laptop. The other thing that was shown was the everything sort of runs in a window now. So Windows Store apps now run in a window. You can resize them. It's got title bar, maximize, minimize, and close buttons. So just as you expect from a traditional Windows. So really something that's going to again be great for laptop users. But it's a bit of a change from the Metro Vision.
Yeah, it is. I'm not totally certain about that, but I mean, the whole point of the Metro Vision was everything was full screen, which, to be honest, it does appear that most consumers have rejected that idea. And I find myself a lot of the time actually snapping stuff so I can copy things from one window to another. So I suppose this is just an extension of that.
Yeah, I think certainly for desktops, I think it certainly does make sense. I would hate for that UI to become standard, or that user experience to become standard on things like my Lumia tablet, or even on the Surface Pro 3 if I'm using it in pure tablet form. I've really taken to that experience and I really like it. So as Gary just said, so I would hate, for me that would be a step backwards if I was forced down that route.
Yeah, for me it would be as well. As I said before, when I use the Surface or the Encore, there's no way that on an 8-inch tablet it would be impossible with your finger or virtually impossible with your finger to get those minimize, maximize, close buttons like it was on my Samsung Q1 running Windows 7, and that's why that was never a good experience, and that's why Windows 8 is so much better. So yeah, we don't want to go back to that. But this, as we said at the beginning, this is enterprise desktop features. The tablet UI I think we'll see more of later. So if you've got the right hardware, then this option seems pretty good.
Yeah.
I suppose Gary, for developers, it's going to mean testing your apps in a new way as well. You're not just limited to a set of screen resolutions. You've now got sort of anything. I know that you had that with SnapView, but even so.
Well, SnapView was different to what I understand, because it sounds a bit like these are scaling from. I'm doing some skim reading at the moment, so if they're scaling, then that's less of a problem for testing. I mean, one of the issues with SnapView is obviously it actually relays out, and you're supposed to relay out. Not that most people do, but
I did. It took me ages to get that working.
I know. So I think that. In many ways, with the way screen resolutions are going, that actually makes an awful lot of sense to do scaling rather than resnapping. So again, though, I take Jason's point, on a small, say 7-inch tablet, you'd want it to relay out. So I mean, this quadrant view they're talking about is interesting as well, sort of 2x2 type snap mode. That's quite an interesting concept, having 4 things on screen.
Yeah, and I guess this comes down to what they're saying with it's hardware, isn't it? That it's dependent on what your hardware is and how that's laid out.
Yeah, I think I mean, I just quickly looking at that quadrant view, I can see how that certainly works nicer than at the moment. You're limited. Well, on some resolutions you can fit 3 Metro apps snapped. I think with the relay out, as Gary explained, it can be a bit cumbersome trying to use 3 apps snapped, but actually having them snapped in quadrants does make a bit more sense.
Actually, I tell you that would work well on the Surface 3 with its sort of squarer screen than on the landscape, sort of the widescreen Surface 2, the Surface 2 view. But yeah, I quite like that quadrant view. It's just going to take some getting used to. Like my one thing hope is that we are looking at the UI for mouse and keyboard, and we're not going to be looking at this for a tablet, or at least if you've got the keyboard connected or whatever, or if you're in windowed view or whatever, give you the option. But I certainly never want to see minimize, maximize buttons on a 7-inch tablet. It would be a bad experience.
Yeah. I mean, certainly. I know we're kind of looking ahead to the future a bit, but it's certainly going to be interesting when they do start talking about the consumer stuff and whether or not they are going to have a more locked down Intel version of Windows that's a bit, behaves a bit more ARM-like, particularly on those 7-inch tablets. You only, some of them are coming like 16 gig of storage, so it's really not going to take long to fill that up if you're not careful.
Yeah.
I think it's the old Jurassic Park quote, isn't it? Everyone was too busy thinking if they could do it, they didn't stop to think if they should do it.
That's very good.
Very good point. Yeah. What else was it? There was the new way of. They sort of emphasised how this is about getting productivity done. It's a bit like the sort of one of their goals that Microsoft spelled out a while ago. So there's a new task view and a button to tap, so it shows all your open tasks and you can flick between them. So that's a button when you're using the mouse and keyboard that you can press, and it shows you the running apps, and then you can just flick into them. So it's a bit like the sort of Alt Tab, but with a button.
Yeah.
But then they also showed the other way is if you swipe from the left, like you would, and if I was to do this now on my Surface, it would flick between Internet Explorer and the Mail app and whatever. But when you swipe in from the left on Windows 10, you get the sort of a windowed effect of the open apps, and then you can press and unload them that way. So a different way of looking at it. Again, we don't know what this is going to be like on a tablet. We only know really what it's like on a hybrid device.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're give an indication that some of the edge UIs might might still exist.
Yeah, I mean, during the keynote, they did show off the Charms bar, and I said, "Yay, Charms bars are there." And then they said, "And this may change." So, oh, because as I've said, I think it was last week or whatever, I use the Charms bar quite a bit actually on the Surface. So, but I said that I very rarely use it on the desktop, and when I do come to use it, I find it difficult to use when I've got my dual monitors and mouse without borders. So, but anyway, it's still going to be around, but maybe in a different form. But I don't know, this new task switching. I was showing my kids actually before we come to record. We've got Surfaces, and they like the idea of swiping through and it just flicking between the apps. So they weren't sure about this new view, but we'll see what it's like when we get to test it.
So just while you mentioned that they kind of specifically highlighted the fact that things may change. I've just noticed one of the final sentences on the blog post on the Windows blog about how it's an early look at what Windows 10 might be, and how we embark on the Windows 10 journey together. While it's early and things are bound to change as we collaborate together. Couldn't imagine Steven Sinofsky saying that, could you?
I mean, just from what I've obviously done a very rapid skim read because I'm missing a lot of stuff this evening, but it feels very back to Windows 7. In not just in the fact there's no emphasis on the desktop and that, but in the whole outlook, the preview program which they've announced today as well.
Yeah.
That's very much how we worked with them on Windows 7. And I really like that idea that's coming in, and that they might actually listen to some input on this.
Windows Media Center.
Yeah, it's probably not listen to that.
No, but it's in the Sinofsky era. It was, we knew best. This is what you're getting. Tough. And I think a lot of people have said, well, no, that's not what we want, and we'll stick with Windows 7, thanks very much. And I think this time they've listened to users and enterprises and realised that they can't just inflict, or I don't know what's the right word, but put this vision and everybody will just sign up to it straight away. They've got to bring people along, and things like that new start menu is a hybrid way of a halfway house, but it brings people to the new desktop, and maybe next time they could lose the start menu again.
Yeah, I think I mean, we were saying, Gary, before you joined, how they need Windows 7 not to become another Windows XP, and they also need everybody, including particularly enterprises, to adopt this version of Windows that is potentially a basic Windows that they then just kind of keep adding features and bug fixes onto. Yeah.
And I know we'll talk about the name later, but it does. I almost expected them to not have a name on it, and it's interesting, isn't it? How, if you look at, say, the competition, if you look at Apple, for example, they basically had the same OS for the last 6 years, 7 years, but they keep adding updates to it.
Yes.
And I can see them going the same way with this one, and I think even the name's involved to that.
I mean, one thing that would be really interesting, I think, would be if we could look into a parallel universe, one where Windows 8 had the start menu, had a kind of the old traditional Windows. You can enable a classic start menu, and would we have 100,000 apps in the store if they'd gone down that route? I mean, we'll never know, but
we never know. It depends if they actually had an app store, though, because I think the app store is a big thing. And if you said yes, you can have your app in the app store, but it has to follow these guidelines, then people would have chosen between doing desktop apps and doing these store apps. And I probably could see still having quite a lot of store apps, especially with the universal app model. That would have made it still tempting for people to do so. So yeah, it is difficult, but because I've often said that the whole point of the Windows Store thing is not necessarily about the Metro full screen look. It's more about the walled garden. From a developer point of view, the walled garden is the key thing. It's the fact you can't do an awful lot in that space. And I'm just clicking through, and I actually do like it. What I've seeing of it so far.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it makes sense, doesn't it? Even if you're, I think the snap view went a long way to sort of to help with the sort of multitasking in Windows 8. But having them in a window is still a nice idea, especially again as Microsoft to focus on the desktop in this build and this release. That when I'm sat on my laptop at work, which is a 17-inch monitor laptop with a second monitor, having the modern apps running Windows makes so much sense on there. So I could have Visual Studio on one display, and then I could have 3 or 4 Metro apps running on it as well, and at the same time, and in Windows. It makes so much sense to do it that way. But then when I'm on my Surface, it makes more sense to have it full screen. So having that flexibility to do both and being able to switch between them makes a lot of sense. And the new start menu may actually will mean that we'll get more modern apps, because anybody that uses Windows 8 maybe on a traditional laptop and doesn't like the sort of the Metro style, never even uses the start menu, so they stay away from that, so they never bother. But now if you can get I don't know, a Flickr upload app that runs in a small window, they'll use it because they can have it at the side of the screen or drag it around wherever they want, whereas in the past you had to have it as full screen or this funny snap view. So I think we might see more Windows Store apps being developed because it's more accessible now.
Yeah, I think that there is something to say for that, and I think also because it is one operating, it's not really one operating, but it's going to be sold as one operating system across all the platforms. If you develop universal apps, you've got a lot more real estate to sell it into, and people. I think there's a feeling that real desktop users didn't buy store apps, even though they were forced upon them. If you see what I mean, and most of the sales were actually to tablet and Surface users. So I think this could actually open up a new market.
And the other thing as well on that they showed off was multiple desktops. It's a bit like the Linux virtual desktop, I think there was actually an add-in for Windows. I might have used it actually. I'm pretty sure I've got in the back of my mind. I've used one for, maybe it was on Vista. It was an add-in where you could sort of have these virtual windows or virtual desktops, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but sort of not sure the use of it. But I don't know. Maybe I could have a layout for developing, a layout for testing, and a layout for browsing, or something like that.
Yeah. Did they mention anything whether that's sandboxed or not? Not those. Would one virtual desktop affect the other desktops?
I don't know whether they mentioned it specifically. I've only seen the screenshots so far, so I don't know. I think it's really more of the sort of what you expected, the virtual desktop, where you could probably drag between them maybe, but whether you'd be able to have 2 instances of a modern app running on the across them, I'm not quite sure, because that's currently, it's not possible, is it, to have the same app running twice?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Which is a bit weird.
Yeah. We're thinking what else in the UI stuff that they showed off. That's to mention on the blog post. I think that was it really. Finding files faster. They say So you've got the File Explorer displays recent files. So, but as I was saying at the beginning, really this release is totally desktop laptop users, and it's aimed at showing how you can go from Windows 7 to this. And we've not got to see any of the tablet and touch features. Maybe this combined OS with Windows Phone that we've heard rumored. None of that is in this release.
Yeah, sorry, I went quite there. I was just been scanning all the comments on the Windows blog post, and bar a couple, let's see how many comments there are actually. I didn't say how many comments there have been, but certainly looking through, there's maybe a couple of negative ones, but on the whole, it's all really positive, which definitely wasn't the case with Windows 8.
Yeah. I mean, I think so far, when I think how I use my laptop, it looks great for that. And when I think if I was forced with that UI onto the Surface, it wouldn't, or on Core 8, it wouldn't look good. But they're not saying that. They're just, this is the view for laptops. And in fact, as Gary mentioned before, they've launched this preview program. I think it's called the Windows Insider program, where you can get early access to Windows 10 and get the technical preview. And they explicitly say it's the technical preview of Windows 10 for desktop and laptops. And there'll be a server technical preview of the Windows Server management tools soon. And then elsewhere in the post, I noticed they said this is the first chapter, Windows 10. Early in 2015, we'll introduce a consumer chapter and talk about other device types and more consumer features. So that's beginning next year is when we're going to see the maybe this combined UI. And they also mentioned that at Build, they'll show more of the developer story, and then later in the year, they'll release Windows 10. And look forward to some amazing new devices, Surface Mini. I added the Surface Mini bit.
Yeah. I think one of the commenters mentioned that there might be a Surface Mini in the graphic at the top, but yeah, I think I mean, interesting, that gives us some indication of timeline, doesn't it? So it's definitely not launching before Build. So that would indicate, I guess, what, maybe a middle of the year targeting release.
I mean, so things I'd been hearing rumors beforehand that they would try and push it out to people prior to Build, but Build would be the final announcement, and then it would be out sometime after that. No, this seems to time with that rumor, so I think that I'll listen more closely to that source.
In fact, when you look at the picture that they've put on the post, and I think it's the one I put on my post, I copied over, they show sort of mocked up UI on all these range of devices. If you notice that there's a phone and two tablets in portrait mode that show sort of the traditional, the modern Windows Start menu, what we have now, and then the Surface looking device, the hybrid, and the laptop show the new style hybrid Start menu. So
although one of the tablets actually shows the Start menu twice. The new start.
That's that. Yeah, what looks like a Surface 2 shows the new style hybrid one, but then the one that looks like maybe an Encore or something like that is or a Surface Mini. That looks like how Windows. In fact, it looks more like Windows Phone from this big blown up view. But obviously, they're just mock-ups, so it's probably not worth reading too much.
Yeah, I noticed the like the yoga style PC's got it's actually got a split screen.
Yes,
the top it's got a line across diagonally, and the top right has got the start menu. Sorry, the start screen, and then the bottom left has got the start menu. So I think they're clearly trying to show that there will be this, a device doesn't necessarily have one fixed mode.
Yes, I think that's right, and I think that's probably what we're going to see, aren't we? That if you've got a keyboard and a mouse, you're going to see the start menu, and if you haven't, you're probably going to have the Metro or start screen UI. We have to stop calling it Metro. That's really an old word now. But it's funny when you see the Xbox picture, that's actually got effectively the modern start screen on it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but my expectation is this is going to be, a taskbar properties style option where you've currently got the tick box to boot to desktop and show the desktop when I close the last application and stuff like that. So I imagine it will be just some kind of option saying you start menu or start screen.
Yes, that's initially what I thought, but then I thought, well, maybe they'll actually be clever and look. So if I pull out my Surface 2 now, and I've got the keyboard attached, and it's in laptop style, then I would get the start menu. But as soon as the keyboard's away, then I want the it's getting confusing now. I want the actual start screen. So maybe they'll actually make it adaptive based on maybe there's there's 3 options, one way or the other, fix it one way or the other, or have it auto detect, because that would make the most sense, wouldn't it, if it automatically picked what the right mode for you. But then you give the option to overwrite it.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense. And also another question for this one, that big almost hanging on the wall image, that's your phone, isn't it?
Don't be knocking my phone. Yes, but I'm waiting for the desktop on here. I want that hybrid one.
Yeah,
I still very much like mine.
I've just seen one thing in the blog post that I like. It's started one of the paragraphs says one way to look at it is that Windows is at a threshold.
Yes, I saw that.
Very clever.
Yes. So Gary, just before we leave it on, so the naming, me and Jason discussed it. We did say with this show as well. This show is going to be a random number now. The show title, we're not going to use sequential numbering anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about there is a sort of 10 is a number which seems to have
a number.
It's a number which people don't go past a lot in version numbering. As I mentioned back OS 10 or OS X as it tends to get called now, but OS 10. I could see this being the one Windows version for the next 10 years. And it is a weird choice because everyone's been calling it Windows 9, but I can sort of see the marketing spin on it. We've improved it so much we had to call it 10. I honestly don't think we'll get another Windows version number for a very long time.
Yeah, that's my expectation as well, that it would just be something that, there will be kind of incremental release of Windows. They can't afford to wait 3 years for a big bang release. I mean, even in some ways, the fact that Windows 10 will be probably a couple of years is practically too long.
I get the feeling as well that that's probably what would happen with Windows 8. We've got 8.1, and then maybe we would have had 8.2 and so on. But because of the issues with Windows 8, Microsoft want to move away from that name. Otherwise, it perhaps Windows 8 would have stayed around for longer.
Yeah,
like we said at the beginning, it's not the 8th version or 9th or 10th version of Windows anyway. It's just a name. So it doesn't mean anything really.
Actually, I was reading a post which actually pointed out it is probably the 10th version of Windows. If you actually count 8.1 as a separate version.
So at least we know what the next name of the Xbox will be. It'll be the Xbox 10.
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Well, I did say Windows 1. They added a 0 to it.
Well, actually, they did say that they wanted to use Windows 1. They were joking, and it was in the. So I mean, I'd only got it from the live blogs, but they said they wanted to use Windows 1, but that was taken, and they showed a picture of Bill Gates with the original Windows. So, so maybe they did want to use that. But. And so when they announced this preview program, they said that that'll actually be available. As we record this on Tuesday evening tomorrow, but as the show goes out on Thursdays, it will be available already. So I think it's preview.windows.com, and like you said, Gary, this is a bit of a change from how Windows 7 was, but in early releases there was a lot more feedback that testers could do. So I think it's interesting that they've gone down this approach. I think it's been said before, isn't it, that Microsoft tend to veer from one way of doing things to another, and they went through a very open stage with Vista.
Yeah.
And showing off early releases, and that backfired. Then they went to the sort of the closed way of Windows 8, and that backfired. So they find the happy medium is something they've got to try and do, really.
Yeah. Well, I was having a conversation with another company quite recently, and they were saying that they'd gone to the approach now of doing public alphas and betas because it actually saves them a lot of money. And I wonder if Microsoft's doing this because we've had this recent thing where they said they were cutting back the test teams internally.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And by actually having public programs, and especially if this rumored diagnostic stuff they got built into it is there, this sort of Asimov stuff that Major Foley was talking about the other day, then potentially they could get an awful lot of information from the insider program to help their testing, and not have to need so much internal testing while they develop.
Yeah, and I think they're doing this to avoid the major shock, aren't they? Of a new OS.
Yeah, I think actually, I think if Windows 8 had actually been in a more public forum, and a lot of the problems would have got out of the way before it actually got launched, and people might have been more excited by it. But
well, like we said in the past, a simple switch to put the old style start menu on would have made a lot of people very happy, and they would have probably found that through a bit of feedback if they got for sort of enterprise and developer and just user feedback. But then they had the vision, and they in some ways still got to respect them for having that vision with the modern UI. And as I said previously on the shows, had they stuck with Windows 7 and just evolved it a little, I probably wouldn't be using it now. So they had to do that, but then they've still got to bring everybody along with them. Yeah, and that's very much what this looks like. So you're going to be testing, you're going to give this a try?
Yeah, I think I actually will download the preview program and put it on a PC. Haven't decided which one yet, but but yeah, I mean, it makes an awful lot of sense to have a try with it.
Yeah, Jess, you're going to give it a try?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll be interested to see what the release notes are for it in terms of how. What's missing, but yeah, I'll certainly be getting it up and running in a virtual machine just to have a play with it.
Yeah, I think I'll be doing that. I have to probably recycle an oldish laptop because it should really run with 16 gig of storage and 1 gig of RAM, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
that's what some of these OEMs are now selling. So yeah, I'm probably going to give that a try on an old machine. It certainly won't be trying it on any of my Surface devices because it's not going to run on there.
Although, yeah, I mean, it would. Yeah, I might be tempted to put it on the Surface Pro 2, but I think my wife would probably kill me.
Yes, that would be a good try. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without any touch features. Really.
I'd have to buy a Surface Pro 3 to try it out on.
Yeah, I was playing with the Surface Pro 3 at PC World over the weekend, and it's a really nice device, though. But it's just how to justify the cost to myself is not easy.
Yes,
I put it on my Christmas list. I think it might be a bit outside my limit, though.
Yeah, is that the Core i7 with 512 gigabytes of storage? And
yeah, the nice thing is the lowest price one is actually the one that's probably closer to the price range, but then you can't get hold of them.
No,
it's the i3, isn't it? You can't get hold of the i3 version.
Yeah, I saw that. I think it was last week when we were talking. I noticed that John Lewis had got the top of the range one back in stock, which was out of stock for quite a while.
And actually, while we're talking about that as well, I don't know if I mentioned this previously, but the Surface 2 was on sale in the Microsoft Store for $249, I think, the 32 gig one, but they're out of stock now.
Right. Yeah, I think they. I mean, it will be interesting to see what happens with that line, because I think the Surface Pro 2 was being discontinued, isn't it?
Yeah, but the Surface 2 itself is not. I've got a feeling they're not making any more of those, but I don't know. But it's just that they've run out of stock on the Microsoft Store, and I think John Lewis of the smallest one, the 32 gig one.
Yeah, it would be interesting as well to see. I know, again, we're talking about next year now, but it would be interesting to see what happens with the Surface 2, whether or not there's a next generation of that as well. Yeah,
definitely. Surface 3 would definitely run nice with the some of these things that we've seen on this new build, and then you've got the actual the touch UI, whatever that looks like, on top of it. It would certainly be an interesting system. So anyway, so you can give yourself got preview.windows.com, and you can give it a try and send us some feedback. Ian at thedigital-lifestyle.com. Let me know what you think of it, and we'll be having a play with it this week. The first thing I'll be doing is going to see whether there's an eHome directory in there, see whether Windows Media Center's on there. I somehow doubt it.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if the upgrade process is in there.
Yeah, that's right. You could even I could possibly try that upgrade. Media Center one from when they brought out previews of the Windows 8. If you installed it over Windows 7, I think it removed Media Center, didn't it, until they enabled that.
Yeah.
So actually, that leads on to a blog post that I did this week, actually, because I thought before the Windows announcement comes, I thought I'd see what sort of people think. And again, it just shows how many Windows Media Center fans are out there, because again, it was one of the most read posts of the week. Whenever we mention Windows Media Center, and despite what Microsoft think, there is a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely still out there. Yeah.
So, so the post that I did is, will Windows Media Center be in the next version of Windows? And it's something we talked about on the show, which is why I did the post. We talked about it in last week's show number minus 327 to my new numbering system. But yeah, so we talked about it. Will we see Windows Media Center in Windows 9? And we said last week, but Windows 10. I'm still not sure, actually. I really don't know. I got off, I'm pretty 50-50 on this. Somehow I think, well, maybe they're just not going to bother. And the other part of me thinks, well, maybe they'll just keep the option as it was with Windows 8. There's no technical reason why they couldn't get rid of it, apart from the EPG guide data that Gary's mentioned in the past.
Yeah.
So it's something we've discussed already, but it just shows you there are a lot of people using it, because there's a lot of feedback and a lot of people reading that post. Now, what else have we got that I wanted to talk about this week, apart from Windows 10? For HTC users, you can now get Windows Phone 8.1 for HTC for the 8X, which is something that's took a while. We've had it for Lumens for some time, but you can now get it for the update for the HTC, so the 8X and 8S.
Can you get it for 8S as well?
I think so. I got it on my 8X. I didn't try the 8S to be honest. But I know it worked on the 8X.
Yeah, I think they're also expanding the rollout of Cyan, aren't they, for people that were stuck without it due to the
on my son's 630, it's still not got it, but I haven't tried turning off the dev update and then checking again. That's what if you do that, that's a way of getting it.
The 630 came with Windows 8.1, didn't it?
Yeah, sorry, Cyan I meant.
Oh, right, okay. I thought it came with Cyan as well.
No, it came in black.
Ah, okay.
And my son's 630's got black, and he's got the 8.1 update, whereas my other son got the 635, which came with Cyan, but hasn't. I didn't put him on the developer preview, so he hasn't got the, the folder view yet. So we've got the sort of they're out of sync. So there's only my phone that's got both. But it's got the Sense Core, extra Sense Core and stuff. So although it doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but it's good to see that. I didn't really notice any changes to my phone when I did the update the other day. I can't even remember if they really detailed what was in the change, what was in the update.
I'm signing off for the night.
Gary's virtual friend's talking to him again.
My home is just told me it's too late and it's signing off for the night.
Yeah. Gary, you should go to bed now, Gary. Gary, I'm turning off the oxygen in the living room now.
I think, I mean, they didn't do too much, did they? I think it was mainly just about enabling Cyan and the updates for the HTC devices. So I don't think there was necessarily any specific changes. Although must admit, I've kind of found Cortana a bit more snappy since installing the update.
Yeah, I can't say I've really noticed much change.
Yeah, no, I mean, I used to find going back to the home screen was quite stuttery with Cortana pinned as a wide tile. And I'm not noticing that anymore.
No, I don't have it pinned. I actually getting more and more into using Cortana as well. Use it for reminders a lot, especially when I'm driving. You can just think of something. I'm sure I'll be glad when the denim comes in, because you can say, "Hey Cortana," then you don't even have to sort of hold the search key down.
Yeah, I mean, my wife was asking about Cortana because she still hasn't got it on my old 920. And she made the interesting point, because I was saying I've been making quite a lot, in fact more use than I expected to, of the location-based reminders. And she was asking, can you, like for example, you could say next time I go to Tesco's, remind me to get milk. But she said, could I just say next time I'm passing an electrical store? And I didn't think you could do that kind of generic reminder. And I think maybe you can more in the States, but I don't think necessarily Microsoft have got that classification of stores as such.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't tried that, to be honest.
But that, I mean, that would be nice not to have to mention a specific store name, but actually just, if I'm passing a supermarket, or I'm passing an electrical store or something, or a DIY store.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Another post I saw of yours this week, and I apologize because I got an email about 2 weeks ago, and I meant to mention it to you, and it completely slipped my mind. But I mean, I think there was definitely a case of tumbleweed, but Tesco closed their Club Card TV service. If anybody ever used it, which I signed up for, and the reason why I meant to mention it 2 weeks ago is I got an email from them saying that they were shuttering it and giving me a free Blinkbox movie to watch,
Right?
or at least a token, to make a rental free. So yeah, I kind of knew that was coming.
Yeah, it seems. I remember. Well, I found the post that I wrote about it last year, and we discussed it on the show. Didn't we? That it was a way of providing some content for their Android device, but it just looks like it didn't get the take up that they envisaged, and they're sort of focusing on Blinkbox.
Yeah, and I mean, it was always free, wasn't it? I mean, apart from you had to have a club card, but I think practically everybody's got a club card these days. But I think probably with those kind of free services, the media companies don't want people getting used to free, free media, do they? So I think the content was quite limited.
Yeah, and the ads were pretty. I think it was like 5 minutes of ads. It was almost like Channel 5's surface.
Yeah.
Another post that I did this week. And something I've been using a lot. Xbox Music has been updated, or was updated. I'm starting to get release notes now for some of these apps from Microsoft.
I've been badgering about them about that.
So the updates in this, there was sort of nice friendly messages when you buy an album or song. So they just didn't sort of. I think in the past when you bought something, it kind of just did it. And that was it. And you think, did it work? Did it not? So you get little updates. There's some new update banners. It skips tracks as well when they're not playable. Improved performance, reduced errors, and other bug fixes. So all little things, but all do make it a little bit more usable. And I have no issues with the app now. I'm finding it to be pretty stable.
Yeah, I've been using the Xbox Music on the Lumia, all the time. And yeah, it's definitely working really well. I still think I'm still surprised they haven't integrated OneDrive into uploading your own music. That just seems to be taking an absolute age to see if it's coming at all.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll tell you one story we haven't talked about. I'm running out of time, but I want to fit it in. Perhaps highlights the change of attitude at Microsoft. Is WinHeck is back?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Gary, what was WinHeck?
It's I can never remember what the letters actually stand for, but it's basically
Hardware Engineering Conference, is it?
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah,
basically, it's the conference for people who package Windows on hardware. Was the way it was originally described. So it's basically OEM. It's Microsoft's talking to the OEMs conference. Which is great. It was really good to see, and obviously they've expanded. They seem to have extended the reach of WinHeck this time. We're talking ODMs, and it's not just going to be about PCs, which it used to be about. It's obviously going to be about phones as well, which is good.
Yeah, and I think this highlights sort of the change in attitude, as I was saying, because I think it was killed off, and then PDC was killed off, and we had the build event, which was run by the Windows team, and now we've got this back, which is a way of engaging perhaps the hardware partners and making sure that there's a viable Windows ecosystem and conversations with them.
I think it's about partnership and discussion rather than imposition.
Very well said. Yeah.
which I think is a noticeable change.
Yeah, I think so. And I was having a look through some of the posts that we've written in the past about WinHeck, and I found the Sideshow remotes were announced at WinHeck, amongst other things. Remember the RecoVision one?
Yeah.
And some media center driver stuff as well, which TV tuner card drivers and things like that were also discussed there. So yeah, it's quite an important show for that stuff. Just other things I want to mention. All the Bing apps have been rebranded. Jason, have you got those updates?
Yes, I had them on my phone this morning. I think it was. I think one of the only apps that's really changed was the health app, I think. But they seem to have come down. I guess not really much change other than the name.
Yeah, it's more about that sort of consumer brand of MSN now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Have either of you played with the preview website for MSN?
Yes.
And I mean, that is so similar to the apps now.
Yeah.
It's quite. I mean, I used to sometimes get different stories on the MSN's website that you did in the apps, but that's definitely not the case anymore. If you look at the news feed, it's the same as the quotes being MSN news. You look at the sport, it's the same as the sport MSN sport. So I'm waiting for the MSN lifestyle and MSN entertainment apps to come out as well.
Yes, they probably will do those. Yeah.
And MSN cars and probably MSN videos as well. Because they've got those extra feeds there, which would make really good apps.
In fact, MSN video used to be a thing, didn't it? It used to be I used to upload our videos that we did up to MSN video. Soapbox. Soapbox.
Yeah, indeed.
Official feedback from my mum, she doesn't like the new MSN.
Okay, roll back those changes.
So just go show them that there are people out there that actually do use it.
Yeah. I mean, I actually, although I like the preview, I did actually switch back to the old version. There's a couple of things you can't find quite so easily. I'm trying to remember what they are now, but the layout is. I do think it is really good that you've got that now consistency across all the platforms.
Yeah, I like them. The health app actually cloud syncs your data now, so you get the motion tracker stuff on the 1520 that syncs up with the apps, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
One final thing I just want to mention as well is the Play 2 app, the Nokia Play 2 app for Windows Phone is now been renamed as the other Nokia apps. It's now Lumia Play 2 and supports OneDrive as well. So if you've got content on your OneDrive, you can send them straight to your TV or whatever DLNA device you want.
Yep, really good stuff and works really well.
Yeah.
I've played a bit with that today, actually. That's something else I was doing. One thing I just wanted to point out, since being the Pebble owner, that one of the complaints I made about the Pebble a couple of weeks back was the fact that the fitness tracking apps on there only worked when you had them foreground on the screen.
Right. Yeah.
They've just released an update today, which allows you to have one option actually running in background.
Oh, right. So better.
So you can have your Misfit or whatever, one of your fitness trackers, one that's actually running. So at least it now will count your steps all the time rather than just.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's about all we've got time for this week. So thanks for joining us. Traffic impeding, not.
Oh yeah.
You got there in the end.
It was good. It's good to arrive a little bit after the start.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite interesting to be coming through it fresh as well, not having seen the pre things. It's quite good. That's quite good.
So next week we can talk about our experiences with the preview. We'll tried those, so we'll talk about that next week. And like I said, I wouldn't mind some feedback as well. So if anybody's trying it, drop us a line and we can talk about that on the show next week. So Gary, just remind us where we can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at GaryWMA and also over at fascinatingtech.com. And the new issue of that will be out hopefully by the time we broadcast next week.
Oh, great stuff. And link for that in the show notes. And Jason, where will we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at DatabaseChase.
Excellent. Great stuff. Well, I'm going off to load the 10th version of Windows installed, or is it the 9th or is it the 7th? I'm not sure, but we'll find out next week. And so thanks for everybody for listening. Thanks for the chat room. We'll see you next week.
Brilliant.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Take care.